back again.
We're back. Someone told me, if you're watching the video podcast version, I actually tap the sides of my chair every time we start, apparently. And I just realized, as I did it, I was like, I've been caught out. So watch the visual one, because the visual's fun. But anyway, that's totally a side note. But we're here, Gideon, my dad, Hoekendijk, pastor of Harmony Church. And then I am also pastor here, Jonny Hoekendijk, father and son. We talk about random stuff. We don't always... Most of the time you're not prepped. You have no idea what we're talking about. And I kind of just I guess take you on a... Let's go. Let's talk about random stuff. But today we are going to talk a bit more about forgiveness, and you're going to take a bit more of a lead today, because so we're actually at the moment at church doing a subject. What was it? Series on mental and emotional health. Yeah. And just growing in it, because it's a big wall to I guess being able to encounter God, and it's a big thing that can stop people from actually entering in the fullness of what God's got. Totally. And that's kind of I think that's one of the main. Why have you kind of pushed for it as well?
I think one of the main things in mental and emotional health is basically your self-talk.
Yep.
What do you say to yourself the whole day? I mean, David Dell was so amazing last week, and hopefully if you've missed that one on depression, make sure you watch it. But he is so good, and one of the things I've learned from him is the whole thing of self-talk. And that's why the book, learning to tell yourself the truth, that book is very important. Because what is your self-talk? Your self-talk can completely take you out. Yeah. Because if your self-talk is really negative, if you have some really big lies about your life, about who you are, what you think about, one or two things can completely derail your whole life. Yeah. And so we need to make sure that truth, Jesus says the truth will set you free. Now, to make sure that we have truth in every part of our being.
It is.
Sometimes in the spirit you can be even levitating, man. I mean, you can walk on water but if you are in your head, have some ideas about yourself, about the world, about life, that can take you out. You can do everything supernaturally, but if you can't even live with yourself, if your mind is not your friend, man, it's like David says, it's like hell on earth, literally between your ears. Yeah. And so it's important that we get truth between those ears.
Yeah, I think that's what we want to hit on, because I think there's a lot of people that have had. And that's we're kind of going down that topic at the moment a bit more intentionally. Sorry, the microphones. We've got cool-ass wireless mics today because I lost the other mics. I left them at home. Whoops. But yeah, there's a good demographic of people that are really struggling with. It's so heavy that what's between their ears, that they just stop. And it's just it's really cool that we get to really talk about this openly in a church environment. And, my history is that I've had a lot of history with, I guess, mental and emotional health, especially depression from the age of 16. And I'm pretty open about it. I'm happy to talk about it. And I'm still on the journey. There's a lot of people that are set free completely. And but there's a whole lot of people that it is an ongoing journey. It is an ongoing thing, which can be tough, but it's also you learn a lot in those moments too, and it is a choice in those moments to figure out, God, what are you saying? But I think this is a cool thing that we're really I guess highlighting the fact that it is a thing, and it's tough.
Yeah, whatever the origin.
Yeah,
whether it's a chemical thing, whether it's an abuse thing,
but it's so cool because I actually got to have a counselling session with him afterwards, as you know. You were here.
David Dell?
Dad was here at Bubble Dutch last week, but he just wasn't in front of a mic. He was here. He was just standing next to us.
Unbelievable.
But I got to have a counselling session, which was really cool, and it was just so interesting. It was funny because he's got to a point in his life, and you can just tell that he's kind of sick of people's drama. That he knows the truth. He can come across as strong, and I mean, I heard someone say, with an ego, but reality is he's got to a point where he's just no, that's the truth, and you just need to get over yourself, and this is a big truth, and it's pretty confronting, and I had within my session, he was what about this, and this, and had a whole lot of steps, and it was real cool about his counseling method, because it was a whole lot of truth bombs. It was a whole lot of. I call them bombs because he even said, he's like, "Oh, was that too blunt? You know, or was that too much? Like, sorry for being, forward." But it was so good. Like, it was, again, set me free.
The truth sets you free.
It genuinely did, and we say that. And this is like a throw around, Christian phrase. I know. I think it's in other circles as well. But it genuinely does.
But sometimes we don't want to hear the truth, or we don't want to speak the truth. I mean, look at little children. Look at your children. You want to speak the truth. When Johnny, when we do something wrong when you're young, it's, Johnny, don't do this. And if you're disobedient, we've got to discipline you because we want to make sure that you don't go there because it's dangerous for your life. Or don't think that because it's bad for you. But there's a lot of adults who have the same thing.
Yeah.
We believe certain things. And so I don't mind having truthful people speak to me. Now, if you have a small ego and if your identity is not secure in Christ and in yourself, then you will struggle with this. And sadly, in this nation, there is a bit of the tall poppy syndrome. There is a bit of an orphan spirit type psychological stance that is not always that healthy. I found when I come into this country, it is not very flamboyant and necessarily right.
It's more of a, would you say it's more of an assertiveness? Because assertiveness
to speak that.
Yeah, to kind of like be.
Yeah, and we'll speak about it next week. So maybe we can talk about next week. Talking about assertiveness has to do with boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we need, boundaries.
Yeah.
But like you said before, I think it's important that we know who you are. And you've had problems with mental and emotional health, right?
Yep.
I haven't, but I have. I was just thinking, because I had more issues in the areas of performance motivation. I was completely in performance mode because I learned, although my family were Christians, missionaries, fourth generation missionary, it was all about the show must go on. And I remember my brother, it was actually really hard. My brother, we had an issue, we had a bit of a fight one time, and my wife was there too, and I was crying, man. Would have been maybe 23 or something, whatever. And we had an issue that we're dealing with, and we were fighting. We were not good. I was crying, and he was like, "This is so bad."
Yeah.
And then I said to my father, "Hey, we need to talk about this." No. He says, "We have to go to this thing." And there was something we had to do. He says, "Guys, we'll talk about it later. The show must go on." But it was a bit of a theme of his life because I understand that he wanted to do that first. The problem was he never came back to it. He never said, "Hey, what was this thing again you talk about?" Very important for me. So in my psyche, in my things, I said the show must go on. And that became my psyche. That became my default setting.
Yeah.
But if you do it in the Christian life, and particularly the whole area of this week where we're looking at, the whole area of forgiveness and sin and those kind of issues, when you get into a performance mode and you're trying to please God and you think you're never good enough, it's a disaster for your life. Yeah. And then I had some sexual abuse in my life when I was young. So when you have that thing that hits in your life too, man, it's as bad as you in a different area.
Yeah.
And I became a performance-driven person that I had to prove myself worthy in every area of my life.
Yeah.
That's hard, man.
Yeah.
Because you're never good enough. in the sense of you're never going to make it.
Yeah.
In the sense of by whose standard, And if you have a high standard in your own life, then you're trying to reach that, but then you fail and you flip and go into some kind of a tailspin. Yeah. And then you crawl out of it again. And if God is involved with that, and if there's issues with sinfulness and unforgiveness involved with that, and you think God is angry with you, and you put it all into a mix, disaster. So I live with that, Jonathan, for a lot of my life. So I know what you're talking about in that sense, because it's also a mental issue. It was here that I had to process
that's a truth
stuff.
thing, and I think that's the thing. Is like, I think that's the common denominator there, because I think people in that deep dark place, depression, would be like, not really, like, but the truths are the middle ground in that one. I'm probably more speaking on myself, on behalf of myself, but it's a weird thing. Like, it doesn't really.
Yeah, I never had suicidal things in my life.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference.
No, I didn't go that far. But I always had to prove myself. I've never felt good enough. What happened to me is I became afraid of people. And people look me, they see me now in the stage, and I speak for 10,000 people if I want to, and I love that now. But if they're all small. But I really struggle with people. And I was really afraid of people. In school, I avoided any public speaking. I wouldn't go if I had some public things to do. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't go. I got out of most of them. The only time when I started to relax and when I came into my own is when I knew how much God loved me and how much... Remember, I told the story. I don't know if I told the story here, but one time, maybe interesting to hear. One time, that was not that long ago, maybe 15 years ago, that God put me... I fell into a seat. He says, sit down, Gideon. And I felt like sitting down, and he started to speak to me. He said, Gideon, if you never get up out of this chair, then I will love you the same way as if you will save the whole world and be like Billy Graham or whatever thing you want to do in your life and however you want to make your life count. I will never love you more. You can relax right now. Yeah. I will love you no matter what. And then I started to understand the theology about eternal forgiveness, what Christ has really done for us on the cross. And that combination, and then the goodness of God, I learned about the goodness of God. And then all these things I didn't know. And those things became real, my framework of life. And I started to love myself. And so that really changed my life. And now I'm pretty secure in myself. Not because I'm that awesome, although I say I'm awesome the whole time, because that's how God sees me. But I really believe it. I really know that I'm awesome, even though I make mistakes all the time. And I can be a red bag sometimes,
So what would you say... Because that's the thing, and I think it's a thing that we use quite a bit as a Christian language, and used a lot of Christian language just then.
Okay.
Christian, yes.
Yes, I'm a Christian.
I mean it is, but like it's a.
Yeah, fair enough.
What are your tangibles in those moments? What would you say are your those three things that actually got you there? And
gosh, 3 things, man.
Even 5 things.
Okay, so one thing is the key one, and I didn't even know that after I had a master's of theology. And I don't know if I've ever said that before. Is in my paper for my master's paper, one of the papers I did at the end of my master's papers, I think one of the last ones, I had to do a master's paper on the covenants. And I thought, okay, that's interesting, And I did this master's paper on the covenants, and I found out. I know it's very simple. It is so simple. But it completely changed my life. Somewhere in my psyche, I still thought that my relationship with God and the covenant I have with God was up to me and up to him. I got to keep my side of the bargain. He gives his, like it's a contract. Because, hey, that's the way it is. God loves me. He gives his stuff to me as long as I do my stuff. When I found out that the new covenant, because that's a Sinai covenant, is like that, the old covenant. But we're not invited in that. When I saw the new covenant, that the covenant was between the Father and Jesus Christ, not with me, but for me. I cried for a whole week.
We'll go back to that.
I was so excited about this.
That's quite big. That's like
very big.
So we've just gone. You said it really quickly. Can we just?
Sorry, yeah.
You said it extremely quickly. Can we just go over it again because that's quite big. So you're saying that? I guess that's the thing is that it's between what God and.
So it's Godhead, really. It's between Jesus Christ and the Father on our behalf.
So it's not even like the covenant isn't with us. It's purely for us.
It's for us.
Which means it is what is that? What was the big thing that meant for you?
That I could relax, because I just talked about earlier on, I can cry now, because I was so into this performance thing, and I knew that I tried to be a good Christian boy, and then I knew my thoughts, and I knew how I failed so many times. And so I was always breaking the covenant. I was always breaking impure thoughts,
especially if you don't think
anger,
because they'll put you into the I'm not good enough category
all
non-stop.
the time. And so when it happened, but the thing is though, what you have to understand, Jonathan, that's why it was so excited for me. That's where my journey started, with understanding grace and the new covenant. It was not just the new covenant which we are invited to. That's the only thing we're invited. But I understand that the Abrahamic covenant was also that way. In Genesis, I think Genesis 8 or 12, God made covenant with Abraham. He puts him to sleep. He was not even awake. And then he walks through the carcasses. In that way, they cut carcasses, the blood covenant, and then kings would actually walk through the carcasses and say, "We make covenant today with each other." They wouldn't have burned. They wouldn't. Some people do it these days, in those days, in particular the occult. They would do they cut themselves blood, remember, and they share blood together. That's how they make covenant. But the blood covenant that God made was with animals had to be cut. And a pathway had to be made on site. And then kings would walk through the pathway and said, this would happen to you if you don't keep your side of the covenant, but we together make a covenant today with these animals on behalf of the people. And so when you see in the Old Covenant, you see Abraham was asleep, and then you see the fire and the braising something else. Go look it up. It was basically the Father and the Son going through that carcasses on behalf of Abraham. He was even asleep. So the covenant was, God says, I made covenant with Abraham on that day, and he was even asleep. So it was for him, not with him. Now, the Sinai covenant, what God didn't want, he said, do you want this? Yeah, we can do this stuff. He said, I don't want you. I want to be your Lord. I want to have, you can't keep your side of the bargain. And I said, we can all do it. And the first thing that happened, 3,000 people died because they couldn't keep the side of the covenant. And so the old covenant is like this. And that's where we kind of get this stuff from. This old thing, do good, be good. Do bad, get bad. All this stuff is there, murmuring away. And that was my life story. But then I saw that this one was grace in Abraham. But the new covenant, which is the only covenant that we are invited into, is also to do with God the Father and God the Son on behalf of us. And so that gave me such freedom.
Yeah.
Because now it's not up to me anymore. I come into it by faith, and even the faith is a gift from God.
Yeah.
So I'm in some ways off the hook.
Yeah.
But not in a negative way, in an entitled way. It is like, man, that's why grace is so. That's what's called grace. I can't do anything about it. The only thing I can do is believe it and receive it. Now that, as you can imagine, for somebody who's performance driven, completely changed my everything.
Because that'd be and that's the thing. Like, I remember when we had that. We had like one of our first new Christians at Harmony. We were jealous because he didn't have to unlearn so many things like that. And I remember we talked about it. We're like, and because even I'm like, that's so irrelevant. For me, I'm just like, I don't even understand. Like, I've got no comprehension of that because I didn't ever think like that.
You never did?
So I'm kind of like, like you've just, but the thing is, I feel like there will be a lot of people that have been saved,
totally.
5 years deep further than what I have been. And they'll be like, oh, okay, that could actually be, I don't know, it'll be hugely relevant for them. And they'll be like, what the heck?
Most people watching right now, most people in the church, outside the church, they will think, somehow I've got to be good for God.
Yeah.
I've got to behave well.
Oh, for sure.
And do something good, whatever, for him to love me.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of friends that I've had that I've invited to church that are not in the church and haven't been into a church for multiple years are like, oh, I couldn't because I swear way too much. Or I drink way too much. I can't be seen in there.
That's right.
I mean, like, I smoke way too much weed to be seen in church. And it's just like, well, that's not the point. Like, well, who told you that? Who said that? That's your flipping saying. You always say that.
But it's in your,
that?
Yeah, but it's in your brain.
No, it is.
It's in your brain.
It really is.
So somebody told you.
No, yeah,
somebody
exactly.
told
Where is it
somebody.
learned? And and we talk about it all the time because it's like relationship first. Like, number one, I'm like, and that's the thing. My response is like, God's about you and not your stuff. About you, and like, He wants you to be free from. He wants you to live a life that's beyond what you can think of and better than what you're feeling right now. That's what He's calling you into that. And yeah, He might deal with some of that stuff.
Absolutely.
But He wants to deal with this stuff.
Yeah.
And He doesn't want you
in love.
He wants
Truth.
you. He wants all of you. And that's the thing, because we talk about that. Like, we talk about that with about I guess certain people, because you have drama with certain people. Like, there's certain people that have, you're like, oh, like that side of them. Like, I don't want to see that side of them, or like I don't want to be involved with that side of them. But it's like, you need to love the whole person. Like, you need to involve the whole person, because that's the reality of what it is. But God's massive on that, and I guess that's where it comes from. Is like, like we're Jesus, but
Totally.
we have to do that on earth and love the whole person, not just the parts that we want and we like, because it works better in church, but the parts that God wants still. Yeah. And we need to, love the whole person, and it's a tough thing.
And doing that, when we're loving that's how God loves us. That empowers you then to change.
Yeah, well, that's it, and that's the thing of grace. And I remember we had that story of that person that got a huge donation, or like they were very and they had to pay off a motorbike or something like that. Do you remember that story?
Which one again? The motorbike?
I can't use names.
No.
Someone had a lot of debt.
Oh yeah.
And then someone just dropped I think it was either $5 or $10,000, or even more.
Yes.
It was thousands and thousands of dollars, and he was just like, he went up on stage and said, as he testified, he's like, I now understand what God's grace is.
Yeah.
He now understood because he's like, I wanted to straight away pay off my debt.
Yeah.
Like some people, you could have got that money and be like,
yeah.
oh sweet, I have 10 grand, I can actually like have fun, or like I can buy what I want. But he got extended grace, and he was like, no, I need to settle my debts. You know, and like, yeah, you could have been like same thing with like people have that thing towards homeless people. Sometimes they'll be like, I'm not going to give them money because they're just going to spend it on drugs. You know, like there's a stewardship involved in that. I'm not saying
there's a wisdom there too.
There's a wisdom.
I get all this stuff.
And that was the thing. He finally understood grace because it wasn't. He got it no matter what. He got that $10,000, and there was no like, hey, you need to pay off your debt.
Yeah, no strings.
But the person, I think, someone got prompted by God to be like, hey, you need to give this person $10,000. No, nothing. He didn't know anything about the situation, from what I understand. I don't fully remember the story.
No, but how powerful it is.
But it's the thing. It's just like
so
the
powerful.
thing of like, you know, grace is sufficient, and it makes you want to change. It makes you want to like realign with who God is, because it's a Holy Spirit activated. It's kind of the thing we talked about the other day, how like, you know, even like a position of or a what is it called? Posture of like worship, posture of being, you know, in the Bible, being in the Word, praying, like that aligns you with the Holy Spirit and kind of unlocks things in your life.
It does.
It's like unlocks levels. No, but it kind of does. Like
it does. It does.
It like your spirit's, you know, activated, and it's kind of like it kind of takes the front seat.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole thing is named Double Dutch after Double Dutch. That whole thing of, you know, like the spirit is fully God, you know, fully pure.
That's right.
But your brain is not.
That's right.
And so you're fighting that double dutch of like,
totally.
You know, and some people struggle with it, especially those Christians that have gone off the rails, because they're like, they can feel the spirit wanting to be like, hey, like I know, I want you to be, you know, I want you to feel whole again, but then your brain's just like, nah, like this. And so but
so when you keep emphasizing the holiness, when you keep emphasizing love, people are afraid then that you take it out of kilter, you take it out of context, and you will abuse and make a cheap
people are scared of that.
Some people do that. But the thing is, though, it won't happen when you do the real love and the real understanding of grace, because it is so incredibly empowering that basically it just carries you. And if we go into the area now of forgiveness, which is the theme for this week, not so much forgiveness of God, which we've talked about. Remember the whole thing of the question that we don't ask? Remember the God?
Yeah.
He says,
it's a sin.
That's right. A sin to ask for forgiveness.
Controversial.
And the reason why is because God has actually forgiven you. You know, it says in Corinthians that now we have the ministry of reconciliation to the world. Our ministry is reconciliation, that God is not counting men's and people's sins against them. So it means that.
So what?
And that's why he can't judge. That's what he can't say about homosexual laws or earthquakes or whatever the government does or so evil. You can't say God is going to judge that. Now, we're going to have consequences of some of these things in our lives because they're consequences to sinful behavior, wrong behavior. Sin
things
means
that don't align
missing the mark. That's right. You got to have that. But God is not going to judge because of that. Because he has already judged everything in Christ. And that's the big secret. And that's the big powerful thing in my life. And so when you look at the whole area of forgiveness, the way you can forgive yourself is really to know God's forgiveness first. Again, it's not up to you. I used to be so afraid, you know, Jonathan. I used to go to sleep and say, Lord, please forgive all my sins I did today. And tonight, I may do, if I die in the middle of the night and I haven't confessed the sin, I'm going to go to hell. I'm so scared of this because I don't know what I've done today. And so please forgive me for the known sins and the unknown sins that I just don't know about. I used it all the time.
So weird. I can't imagine that.
Oh, all the time. And a lot of people
but like,
this.
Why would you even want to? I don't know. My straight away is like, why would you even want to be a Christian if that's the?
I know,
like,
but that's
hell on earth. That's genuinely hell on earth.
I was brought up this way.
Out.
I know, and I was freaking out all the time.
It's like scared to become a Christian, like
totally.
feared into, and God isn't fear, right? Like isn't like, well, not that, but like, I don't know. It's just,
but the thing is though, there's whole denominations who are still in this, because when you go to church on Sundays, you take communion. And it cleanses you again for another week. And so it's the Old Testament thing again, that once a year, this goat, but it says it will never take away the sin of the world. You're covered for another year. And we have this kind of mentality that we become sinful and things go wrong, and we go to church, we have communion, and we kind of cleanse for another week. That whole thing. But that's not true, though. The thing is, though, Hebrews, Jesus gave his life once and for all. He's taken our sin as far as the east is from the west. Doesn't mean there's still not sin. we sin all the time. And like we talked about last time, not only negative things like anger and lust and those kind of things, we also positive things. We don't have enough faith, or we don't speak enough good words, or we don't think enough good thoughts. You know, so the thing is, though, in the end, knowing how much God has forgiven us and the penalty he paid, he will never pay. He doesn't like sin. He doesn't want us to have sin, because sin always breaks down any relationship. Sin is also putting diesel engine in a petrol car. It's sin. And the reason why it's sin is because the car was not made for that. If you think about the whole area of sin, it was made for this. You are made for this. Any abuse of the way it was made for is sin. It's missing the mark of what it was made for. And that, if you look at that, it is a holy alignment of what things were made for, people were made for, life was made for, bodies were made for, everything like that. That's like, so we do it all the time. But the penalty, has been paid by Jesus. And that's why we can relax, not abuse it, but actually it empowers you now to forgive yourself. Lord, you forgive me. New Testament, Colossians, Ephesians, now forgive one another because God has forgiven you in Christ. You never see it in the Old Testament. It's always like progressive. You know, if my people called by my name humble themselves and wicked ways, then I will forgive their land. People use it now. It's an Old Testament thing. It is not New Testament. So when we are forgiven, we can then forgive ourselves because we know that God has forgiven us, and it also empowers us now to forgive other people, which is the theme of this week, really. How do you forgive other people? You know.
Yeah, that's the topic that we're going after at the moment, which is cool. We talked about it. We actually, as staff, we are going through Soul Talk, which is by Matt and Belinda Stott.
Stott.
Stott,
yeah,
right?
It's part of Living Wisdom, part of Dave Woodell's ministry.
Yes. Emphasise from it, but they're not.
Yeah. Same umbrella ministry. Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. And then
we don't want to get things wrong here.
No.
But we are. We're going after. This week we're going after forgiveness and talking about the whole thing of, I guess, forgiving other people, because, I guess the whole thing of you living with the. What was the analogy they used this morning? It was quite an interesting one. Do you remember the two graves?
Are you talking about Belinda speaking? Belinda or Matt?
I'm asking the audience. I'm choosing that option. 50-50. The two graves one. When you don't forgive someone, you're digging two graves. One for you, one for... I can't remember. Anyway, wow, we really landed that one. That's great. But essentially, we're going after the... what it looks like to, I guess, forgive someone, because we talked about it. I had the thing in my my group.
I know, back to it. Digging two graves. The reason why is because
Can you say the story first,
so
please?
what you're doing if you don't forgive other people, then you hold them captive by your things. So they're being held captive. They're being held captive in this area, but also you are being held captive with your heart issue. And forgiveness actually clears up both. Because you let go of an offense and you say, I will no longer retaliate. I give it away. That's the whole point of it. I'm going to come, Doesn't mean you trust the people, again, straight away.
Yeah.
Trust has to be earned again.
Well, that's, right? There's two things in there, which is quite
But at least
cool.
you say so. At least you say, I will forgive you. And then the other people feel they've also let go. That's really, and the relationship can be restored, but trust has to be regained, and it depends how big the offense is.
For sure. And there's so many aspects to it, because we talk about the one where, you need to forgive them because you're holding that. You're holding that somewhere.
That's right.
I mean, we had one of a Sozo trainer in our group, and she was saying how how many people. There's even a story that someone who had a heart transplant, had a bitter thought or something, like remembered a random bitter thought because it was in your cells, because bitterness you hold on to, it holds in your body physically. And even I talked about it, because I remember Mum always pointed out, it was funny because she would always be like, she'd point out, she'd say, look, like that person being bitter, watch them.
Yeah.
They're going to get sick.
Yes.
They're going to get sick, and they're just going to...
Yeah.
And those people that are always complaining about other people...
Yeah.
And, like, you can see it now. I could definitely walk around on a Sunday and be like,
yes,
yeah, you're sick because of this.
Yes.
Like, and it's I mean, it's brutal. It is very brutal.
Yes.
But it is fact. Like, it is just how it is. Because they don't want to forgive people. They want to hold it, and then they have to... because that's the thing that we see, is we see the projection of that bitterness. They're bitter towards, multiple people.
Yeah.
And you can feel the projection of that. Everyone feels that part. They might not know who they're bitter towards, but you feel the projection of, I'm bitter towards people.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, like getting, the sickness alone from having that, all the physical ailments even. And we had an outrageous one, because like forgiveness and we knew someone. It was, and that's the thing, we can't fully connect it, and I don't even know if it's right saying this, but I'm going to throw it anyway because we're talking. I don't even care. Nah. Sorry.
Be honest.
No, we had this lady that we knew, and she was. Mum was always like, man, I hope she stops being bitter towards people, or she's gonna die. Like she was hurting for her, because she was like, hey, like, you need to forgive people, and she didn't. She was getting very bitter, and like there was a whole lot of drama around it, and then she died of like cancer 2 years later. But like. And there's elements of like we shouldn't have prophesied or even thought that, because it's really it's speaking that over her. But there's elements where she did it to herself, like, and she held that. She never forgave. She even had something with me, and it was just like every time I talked to her, I was like, well, like, you can forgive me if you want, because I'm done with this. Like, I've parked it, but you're hurting yourself by not
That's right.
By not forgiving someone. And she literally died. And I don't want to say it's all down to that.
No.
And it's not fair to say that. But there's elements where it's a lot connected.
And not even just physical, also mental again. You talk about the whole mental emotional health.
Yeah.
Just in your
hold
brain.
it somewhere. You hold that unforgiveness somewhere.
And that one is sinful. You talk about God asking forgiveness. No, you can't. You can say sorry to God for the stuff you've done.
Yeah.
But you're already forgiven.
Yeah.
Because Jesus has a full work. It's finished.
Yeah.
But to each other, it's important that we forgive, because actually, if you hold back forgiveness, that's actually sinful. Sinful. It's
and forgiveness
wrong.
And forgiveness isn't saying that you are going to everything's okay.
No,
that's the thing. Like, I had this thing with a certain person. I'm probably going to end up cutting this out, but with a certain person where they overstepped boundaries, and I was upset by that. I was just like, I feel violated. And so I blocked them on multiple social medias.
Okay.
And they were upset by that. But I was like, well, if you're going to keep hurting me and using it against me, I'm going to forgive you, because I need to let go of it. But consequences are also, I'm going to block you. You're actually not allowed to see my life anymore, because
that's fine.
You overstepped. And that's not saying, hey, I trust you now. It's saying, hey, I'm giving you an opportunity to re-trust you, but you're going to have to earn it some other way. And that was like I think that's the thing. Like, I had a friend that we were walking and talking, and I think we actually might have talked about it 2 weeks ago, about the whole cheating, like cheating on a spouse.
Yeah.
And he was like, I would never forgive them. I was like, well, that would suck for you.
Yeah.
I was like, and he was just like, what do you mean? I was like, you realize you get hurt by that, right? Because if you don't forgive them, you're just going to be upset, and you're going to hold on to that and be like, you're going to be a little angry person. You're probably going to turn into a little midget, Sorry, I can't say that.
A little midget.
Outrageous. But no, you're going to like turn into a little grumpy old man.
Anyway, you might
midget. It's one of those 12 owls. What are they called from Snowmen? Snow White.
Snow White? Oh, yeah,
the 7 dwarfs, little grumpy. You're going to turn into grumpy. There we go.
Fine.
Full circle. Sorry, everyone that I offended.
Your brain can become a midget too. It can become smaller and smaller. Remember the small thing? It's terrible.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, and that was the thing that we talked about.
It's terrible.
But it is a thing. Like, he was, and I brought it up. I was like, well, what about you? Like, in that situation, you've just been hurt, but if you don't forgive them, you're gonna hurt. You're gonna hurt heaps. Like, you're gonna feel that, and you're gonna project that. And he was like, well, I'm not going to trust him. I'm like, that's the thing. It's different. It is a difference between forgiving them and trusting them. Forgiveness is being like, hey, I'm actually done holding this, because it's not fair that I have to hold this. Yeah. But, in that example, it's like, I'm going to have to, give space. And what that looks like is boundaries, big boundaries.
That's good. And we'll talk about this also next week. That's when you're powerful.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
You go.
The Bible talks, every wedding I do this, every wedding.
I think it's right.
And every wedding I talk about the whole thing of love is patient, love is kind, it keeps on going.
One
of the things it says, it keeps no record of wrong.
Ooh.
See, I think that's the most powerful thing. If we all lived like that, see, that's what God does. He will not keep a record of wrong anymore. Like Tante Corrie ten Boom, friend of our family, very famous lady. She says, in de Dutch, she says, je gaat met de zonde van God, de zonde van ons leven, zijn in het water gegaan en je mag daar niet vissen. So he says he put all the sins of the world into that lake, and it has a little sign, prohibited to fish. You can't fish anymore. And so she says, they're gone. And the thing is, you're not allowed to bring those things up. And so the whole powerful thing is about God does not keep a record of wrong. Now, he sees it, and he wants you to help you overcome these things.
Yeah.
But the penalty is gone, and he only wants to help you do it. And he forgives us before we even do it. So if we somehow can learn to not keep a record of wrong, can you imagine what a world this would be? How a relationship would be incredible. I'm choosing not to hold this against you. Now that's love. See, that's why I think I want to go deeper. I'll talk maybe some other time about. I'm on this journey right now because I'm discovering that there's mechanisms in resolving issues. Yeah. But the way to do it is even going to the even deeper. And that's
the thing. I'm aware of right now because I'm thinking. I'm aware there's people going to be listening that they're going to be like, well, you don't realize what that person did to me. What do you say? And that's the thing.
I know what people have done to me. I told you about this.
And let's talk about it. Let's talk about that.
I did already before. But what? How do you want to interpret this then? It's not just a saying. What do you do with those kind of people? You have to let go. Yeah. In the end, you have to forgive. But I'll tell you what it is. I'm going to the bottom now. I think the issue and the secret is becoming love. See, when you become
what is that, though?
Real love. See, Jesus was fullness of love. He is love. God is love. I'll tell you why it's so important. Because I'm learning this. When you are so full of love, then it will not hurt you as much anymore. Because love absorbs all this stuff that's being thrown at you. Right? And you become love. That's why you can love your enemies. How can Jesus love your enemies? He just insulted you. He abused you. He ripped you off. He betrayed you. He did that, all that stuff. How can you absorb this in love? Well, how can you absorb this without love? Yeah. You have to become love. Because love, in the end, has the other cheek too. Yeah. So hit me here too. So, but it's so deep. I'm not saying I'm solving all the problems right now, but there is a
But what is that?
Like
you've just said become love. Like, what does that mean for me? I'm going to play that devil's advocate here. You just said become love is the answer. What is that? What if you just said
become love?
Make it more tangible, because I actually don't. I want to connect with that, but I don't know what that is.
Become loving is that you are able to have negative stuff thrown at you and people hurt you, but you feel so loved by God, you feel so loved in yourself that you can actually already keep no record of wrong. You can already, as they go along, you can actually already forgive and say, well, listen, this is actually not my problem. There's either a demon in your life somewhere that's working on your life. Yeah. There's some hurt because you're reacting out of it. They somehow are able to comprehend and to deal with stuff that people do to you that is so profound that it doesn't affect you in the same way anymore.
I think that's the key that you said was they're like, because if you have so much and you let God, I guess, love you so much, then you feel so loved that nothing can attack you really. That's kind of I'm trying to figure out.
Off a duck's back.
Yeah.
Now you can say, oh yeah, but that's just sticking your head in the sand. Well, in some ways it is, because think about it. Think about all the stuff that happens against you. Most of the stuff, unless it's self-inflicted in the sense of you asked for it, right? Yeah. But generally, if people are really hurting you on purpose, but you like, hey man, this is not, what are you doing? like somebody cheats on you. Now, it can be because you're dumb, because you don't give any sex or something. I mean, it can be like that in a marriage. I mean, it can be dumb like that in the sense of after a while. So, you know what I mean? I mean, it can be so in the sense of some relationship. But if there's really some bad stuff, you know, there's a reason. There's a reason why people do this. There's a reason why they hurt you, and they're probably hurt because hurt people hurt people.
That's it.
So in the end, you can bring things. You can relativate.
Yeah.
What? Relativeren. Relativeren is become not relativeren. That's a Dutch thing. Relativate, be relative.
Restore.
No. Make it relativeren. Put things into context. You can actually put things into context because you already. Andrew Womack is incredible in this area.
Yeah.
You read some of his books, and he talks about this whole thing. He says, "When I don't react anymore, people are just really asses to me. You know, I'm just not going to do it because I know there's some devil is behind them or some dumb things behind them. I'm just going to love on them. A bit like that. It's like you're just dumb, but you don't say it. But you say, hey, I understand this. It's not going to rock my world because I'm actually happy with myself. You know, but
that's the thing. I think you, and that's the difference. You start seeing the person for who they are, and I think that's the big thing that I had it for like a whole year was that the whole thing of seeing people how God sees them, no matter what.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. As soon as you see them how God sees them, you'll see them yelling at you, saying you're the problem when really they're just hurting. You know, like you can see them for
that's exactly what it is.
And that's the thing. I think it's the God. It's almost the God vision, like the Jesus vision of like putting those glasses on. Because that's the thing. You start seeing people for who they really have been called to, not what they. Fruit, you know, what the fruit or whatever it is in front of you that you see, then because that's the thing. Like, I mean, you know, people react to people, but it's because I remember we had I can't remember exactly, but the amount of people that would react to, especially in Christian circles, to people, you know, drinking too much. Mm. There was like a whole thing around. And people would have a go at them and be like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, like, you know, just, and they'll just really kind of, they would see the drunkenness, the heavy drinking, and be like, what are you doing? Like, you know, sort your stuff out. But then the God factor is, hey, bro, like, why are you there?
Yeah, what's going on?
Like, what's got you to this point?
Why do you need that?
Well, it's not even like not being aggressive, but like more like looking beyond and being like, "How you doing?" Being, you know, coming from the other stance of like, because as soon as you have the God, you know, I guess the God glasses on, you'd see the person be like you look at the heart, you find the heart in this situation, you get past the fruit, or I call it fruit because it's the
consequence of their life, whatever is coming out of their lives, the good and the bad.
The good, yeah. Again, the good and the bad, but
that's prophecy. Of course, prophecy pulls out the good stuff. Prophecy is seen with God's eyes,
and
you're not made for this. You're not made for that, you know, because God sees you this way because He wants you there, and that's why prophecy is so powerful because it pulls out the gold, you know, into people, and because people are, anyway.
And that's I guess that's a cool thing in the area of forgiveness is that having those you know that looking at them through a God lens of being, you know, they've hurt you, and it's kind of like, man, like I want to forgive them for me, but I want to forgive them so they have something less on their plate, so they can actually go after, you know, fixing their brokenness. You know, because that's you see the person, you see the potential, but that's the thing. You can choose to look at the brokenness, or you can choose to look at what's God's actual plan for them. And it is my plan to not forgive them, robbing them of a God plan, which is that's a scary one.
Totally.
Like, am I not forgiving that person? Is that, you know, not me not wanting to forgive that person? Holding them back from encountering God.
Yeah, because your offense, man. And your offense, you can be so offended by people, and that's why you got to be so right in yourself. That's why Dave Riddell is around, because you've got a lot of buttons. If people push your buttons, you freak out and you jump. Now I had a lot of buttons. I still do some, but the thing is that I'm trying to get rid of my buttons. Because if I'm rid of my buttons, you can push me as much as you can. I won't jump. I will just love you. And if you can get to that space, I'm just saying to you, I've had a revelation of it. What can be is just really hard to get there, you know, to become love. This is really powerful, but it's like, because Jesus is like that. He's fullness of love.
And that's it. That's what we've always talked about. We've talked about the fact that we are on a journey, and your journey of becoming love.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? In a few weeks' time, we'll have really clear potential tangibles of what that looks like for you. You'll be like, man, I did this, and that really unlocked me understanding, becoming love.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like that's where we want to. Like that's where we want to go, and that's what this whole podcast is about. Is talking about our journeys and what God's doing as well. And forgiveness is a crazy topic, and it's been good. It's been a good week. It's been a good week in the area of forgiveness. Stu did a great message. Go listen to that. But I think that's us for this week.
So powerful. Love it.
Have we got any final thoughts?
No, I think honestly, there's so many people who are so bitter about something that happened 50,000 years ago, in your life, 10 years ago, 20, 30, 40, and their whole life they're captive by it, and they don't know they're actually captivating themselves. They're putting themselves in prison because they won't let go. They won't forgive. And please, people,
that's good.
Forgive yourself. Yeah. Forgive other people, because God has already forgiven you. So that's not the problem.
Yeah, you don't even
now
deserve
you are the problem. Yeah, now you're the problem, and you're the bottleneck. Like you said, you're the bottleneck. Let's
cause more offense.
That's why I don't want to have the bottleneck anymore. I don't want to be a bottleneck anymore for people. Come on.
Sorry everyone for being controversial.
That's so good. It's so freeing. Let's be free. Freedom. It's for freedom that Christ set us free.
We're going after freedom, and we're going to offend some people along the way. But let's choose love. That's it. I think that's the whole thing.
If people get offended, I'll tell you something right. If people get offended, you still have a button. I'm really sorry. You still have a button.
Oh, that's a good one.
Let's continue next time.
Wow, that's good. That is good. That's true, though. It's true.
It's true. That's very true. Who's pushing a button?
Yeah.
Why are you offended? Why are you offended?
Flip. Whoa.
Like David Bell says, he says, "You're rocking my cage." He said, "Why are you in a cage?" He says, "Why are you in a cage?"
That's good.
It's good stuff. Love it.
But anyway, we are going to keep on this mental and emotional health conversation. So we are doing Soul Talk, part 2. If you do want to get into a life group, feel free to hit us up on our website. There is an area where you can say, I want to join a life group. I would recommend doing it because doing life with people is a whole lot easier, and accountability is number one. Like, accountability makes you grow.
And the teaching this week and every week will be in the email too. So if you miss one of those sessions that we have during the week, we can actually put it in the email to the church. So you can click on it. It's only 20 minutes and listen to somebody talking about these subjects.
It's good. Yep. And we've got potentially some special guests? That are more further along the journey than us and this mental and emotional health. So we are... stay tuned for that, because we are ready. Yes, we want to get the best of the best. That's what Harmony's been known for. We always try and get the best and the best from around the world. That's why we have so many conferences. But it's getting equipped by the best. Why?
Yeah, done.
So let's go. Anyway, that's us for this week. And
adieu.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but bye.
Goodbye.